Not far from where the warmer-bound trains used to depart, the Apple Express stands ready for duty. The year is 1980, and the day bright and sunny, perfect for a picnic excursion into the country.
The Apple Express, when first introduced in 1965, was a concept by an organization in Port Elizabeth called the PE Historical Society. They decided to hire the narrow gauge train that runs from Port Elizabeth to Avontuur to a place called Lurie for a day journey, an excursion out into the countryside for families to enjoy a day out and then to come back into Port Elizabeth. Basically a day's journey out and back on a little steam train.
Taking Tippett's luck in her stride, the powerful little Kalahari shepherds her train down into the Lurie Valley. When the Apple Express passenger train first made this trip to Lurie in May 1965, it was the realization of a new heritage idea.
When the Historical Society actually hired the train, they then created the very first all-passenger train on the narrow gauge system. And this then was such a success that the first train was so oversubscribed that the next weekend they had to run another one. Obviously they'd filled some sort of niche that the people needed to get out. And that became a regular operation. It used to run on a Sunday morning out to Lurie, where braai fires were lit and the folks could have a picnic, because we have them in South Africa, where you cook your meat over open fire. That ran once a month on a Sunday. This continued quite successfully until 1993. The railways had obviously by then committed themselves to diesel traction on the narrow gauge, introduced in 1975. But the steam traction carried on surviving with the diesel traction until the early 90s. And from about 1990 to 93, the steam was kept solely for the passenger service, the Apple Express, which still has been running between September and April, once a month on a Sunday. Their reason for shutting down the steam was the financial implications of keeping steam traction alive. The engines were basically nearing the necessity for major overhauls, so they didn't have the cash to maintain the steam engines.
So the writing was on the wall. Steam traction might be withdrawn completely, even from the passenger service. It seemed the Apple Express was doomed, until a group of enthusiasts tabled a novel proposal to Spoornet, the National Railway Authority.
Our proposal was accepted. They really thought we were crazy, but they gave us a concession to operate on a voluntary basis for the summer months, that is December and January of 93-94. We managed to get together about 30 enthusiastic folk to form the society and to run on this temporary basis to see if it was worthwhile, if we could generate enough support for the train to see if the train could survive.
The media machine swung into action, And this was the deciding moment for the Apple Express. If the amount of publicity showered on the train at this point could not save it, nothing would.
If the train didn't work over those 2 months, the train would be lost. And of course, everybody rode on the train. And we got a concession to operate the train on a permanent basis.
The concession itself was actually granted to a privately owned company, the Alfred County Railway in KwaZulu-Natal. For the next few years, the Apple Express was run very successfully under their auspices. Then in 1995, the Apple Express Society was formally established and took over the reins completely. In so doing, it inherited an item of cultural property, which, though only just surviving today, harks back to the earliest years of railway history in the Eastern Cape.
It's been part of the scene of Port Elizabeth for nearly 100 years. And we have coaches here that date from 1902, and they're still in service. Coaches with old Cape Government Railway bogies on still. Very historical, very interesting. We as a society of volunteers have spent a lot of money on restoring the coaches, bringing them back into decent, serviceable condition. The assortment of coaches we have, we've claimed them from various areas over the years. The railways claimed them. Southwest Africa, some of the coaches came from there, and of course there were those on the Aventure Port Elizabeth line. They are classified in classes with the letters and numbers. Some are completely open type, a long seat room. Others are crossbench like the one we're sitting in now. When the railways introduced the Apple Express in the 60s, the entire train was painted green. All the coaches were painted green. And so they remained for a long time. It looked very nice. But there were many complaints about the green being green only for photographic reasons. It blended too easily with the background. So it was decided to put the cream stripe along the windows. When in 1996 we started refurbishing the coaches, and in view of the train belonging to the Heritage Foundation, and they were using the red ochre and grey, it was decided that we would stick to this red ochre and grey.
Originally built as a composite van, this coach was found derelict in a siding, waiting its turn to be scrapped. During restoration, the Society pondered over what useful purpose it could serve.
So it was converted to become a disabled coach because it has these double doors here.
I see, which are big.
And built these ramps, and you open these double doors, and you let it down, and they roll the wheelchair down.
Oh, right.
And of course, disabled people need a toilet facility and a place to go through. So this was a normal partition always here, and so we converted it and made a door and a catch here to give them absolute privacy. They can close this door and lock it off, and then they have the toilet and the wash hand basin facility. The people who did the real hard work, I salute them. They did a marvellous job.
Volunteers.
The volunteer, especially Carl, he did a marvellous job.
That coach was basically funded by sponsors. Sponsors who gave us the timber, they gave us the paint, they gave us the roofing material, water tanks, plumbing, steel, you name it. It was all came out basically out of sponsor. We supplied the labour, but the material all came out of sponsorship.
Finance is a matter of the utmost concern to the Apple Express Society. With no help at all from the state, and none even from the Transnet Heritage Foundation, they're on their own.
The income that we get from running the train basically pays for the running costs and not for any restoration work. So we've got to look for sponsors to help us with, doing serious restoration work. Because although we have in our possession 8 locomotives and we have 20 coaches, they all belong to Heritage Foundation, Transnet Heritage Foundation, but the big crunch comes in that we've got to look after it.